In the last video, we went through some lichen basics. What organisms compose lichens, where lichens grow, and what they look like. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out to get familiar with lichens in general. Today, we're going to focus on what we can see with the naked eye. We'll learn to recognize basic lichen growth forms, talk about their color, and get to know some features you can easily observe. Lichens can be categorized based on their thallus type, also known as growth form. Being able to understand and differentiate these types is crucial for lichen identification. In many lichen guides and keys, the first question you will have to answer to go through the key will be, what is the growth form? There might be some species whose growth form is intermediate between the categories I'm going to talk about, but in general, we distinguish three main types of lichen growth forms: Foliose, Fruticose, and Crustose. Foliose lichens usually have a flattened thallus and easily distinguishable upper and lower surfaces of the lobes. Both the structure and color might be different on the top versus the bottom of the lobe. In this particular lichen, you can see its green top and dark brown to almost black bottom. Here we have a vivid green with kind of a wide bottom. They lie somewhat flat on the surface and can be peeled off. They're attached to the substrate either directly by the fungal hyphae or by root-like threads called rhizines. Rhizines are not easily observable with the naked eye, but here are a couple of photos from under the microscope so you get an idea of what rhizines look like. Fruticose lichens have a three-dimensional thallus, looking somewhat like a tiny bush. They might be erect or hanging down from the substrate. Their branches can be cylindrical or flattened, and they don't have a top or a bottom surface. You can tell here that either way we look at the branch, we see the color and structure are the same, which is very different from what we saw with foliose lichens. Fruticose lichens are usually attached to the substrate at only one point, which you can nicely see here. Crustose lichens grow like a crust on surfaces, just as the name suggests. You'll most likely see them as those patches or little speckles on rocks. I don't have an example of crustose lichens here, because it's impossible to remove them from the substrate on which they grow without destroying them. These lichens have to be collected along with the substrate to which they're attached, often a piece of rock or bark. Crustose lichens don't have a lower cortex, and the individual filaments can penetrate the surface on which they grow. Color is another important lichen characteristic that will help you with identification. The color of a lichen that you see is a combination of the photobiont color, usually green or blue-green, and pigments in the lichen cortex. When a lichen gets wet, the upper cortex becomes more transparent and the photobiont color shows through, making the lichen color more vivid. When we identify lichens, we use the color in its dry state. However, under different conditions, the color might differ slightly even across a single species. The role of various pigments in the cortex is mainly to protect photobionts from harsh UV rays and to regulate temperature. Lichens growing in colder conditions tend to be darker than the ones growing in hot climates. One of the most obvious features of a lichen is its fruiting structures, which are also important characteristics used for identification. You can see here these disc-like structures. These are fruiting structures of the fungal component of the lichen, and inside these discs are microscopic sexual spores. We call these discs apothecia, and you can really clearly see them with the naked eye. However, they don't always look like discs. Look at this specimen of cladonia. Their fruiting structures look like little hats, and in different species they can be brightly colored. While we have this cladonia, we can also mention podetia, which are these stalk-like structures that support the reproductive structure on the top. Even though many lichen species do produce sexual reproductive structures, it's more common for lichens to reproduce asexually. Think about it. When they release sexual fungal spores, the spore still needs to find the algal component to form a new lichen. There are a few ways asexual reproduction works in lichens. It can happen via fragmentation, when a piece of a dry, brittle lichen simply breaks off. To promote lichen dispersal, some species have developed little outgrowths or projections called isidia. These projections break off easily and can regrow into a new individual lichen. However, more common is dispersal via soredia. Soredia are powdery or granular masses containing photobiont cells surrounded by fungal hyphae. They appear as a grainy surface on the thallus. And before we wrap up, let me mention one more feature that you can often observe. These hair-like appendages on the margins of a lichen lobe are called cilia. They can be long, short, and even branched, depending on the species. Have you ever noticed any of these lichen structures before? And what's the most interesting looking lichen you've ever seen? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.